Today, we're going to talk about the secret switches inside our own brains. The ones that make us say yes, sometimes when we really mean no. We're digging into the absolutely groundbreaking work from Robert Cialdini's book, Influence.
So let's kick things off with a little mystery. Picture this, a store owner in Arizona, right? She's got all this beautiful turquoise jewelry, but nobody's buying it. She's getting super frustrated, so she just scribbles this note for her sales staff, hoping to finally get rid of the stuff.
But here's where it gets wild. The employee totally misreads the handwriting. Instead of cutting the prices in half, she doubles them for everything. And what do you think happened? The entire display case sold out, every last piece.
Okay, hold on. Why on earth would people rush to buy something that just got way more expensive? It makes no sense, right? Well, this totally bizarre story actually pulls back the curtain on a hidden switch in our brains, a really powerful weapon of influence.
The answer, according to Cialdini, is something he calls the Click-Whirr response. Just think of it like a mental shortcut. It's kind of like a pre-programmed tape recorder in your head that just clicks on and starts playing automatically. And believe it or not, this isn't just a human thing.
In the animal kingdom, scientists call these fixed action patterns. They're basically these automatic, almost robotic behaviors that get flipped on by one specific trigger. And the mother turkey is the perfect and kind of funny example of this.
So, a mother turkey is a great mom, right? Super nurturing. But almost all of that motherly instinct is triggered by just one single sound, the cheep cheep of her babies. There's this crazy experiment where a mother turkey would lovingly take care of a stuffed polecat, which is her natural enemy, just because it had a little speaker inside playing that cheep cheep sound. But get this, she would actually ignore her own real chick if it was silent. It's all about that one trigger.
That's such a brilliant illustration because we humans have our own cheep cheep sounds too. A classic experiment showed that if you use the word because when you ask to cut in line at a copy machine, people are way more likely to let you. And the reason doesn't even have to make sense. You can literally say, because I have to make copies. Well, yeah, so does everyone else. But that word because, it's the trigger. Click-Whirr. So let's bring this all the way back to our jewelry store mystery. Those tourists, they probably didn't know the first thing about turquoise. So they fell back on a really common mental shortcut we all use. Expensive equals good. That higher price tag became the trigger for quality. Click-Whirr, and just like that, the jewelry was gone.
Okay, so now that we've got a handle on this whole click-whirr thing, let's look at the first major weapon of influence that takes advantage of it. This one is huge. It's the rule of reciprocity.
Now, this rule is super simple, and it's pretty much universal across all human cultures. We feel this deep, powerful obligation to repay favors. It's the social glue that holds us together, right? It lets us give things to each other knowing we'll get something back eventually. And a study by Dennis Regan shows just how mindlessly we follow this rule.
So here's how the experiment went down. A researcher, let's call him Joe, just gives some of the people in the study a can of Coke, completely out of the blue, no reason given. The other group of people, they got nothing.
A little while later, Joe comes back and asks everyone if they'd be willing to buy some raffle tickets from him. And the result? I mean, just look at that difference. The people who got the free Coke bought twice as many tickets as the ones who didn't. For the price of a can of soda, he got a 500% return on his investment. It's incredible.
But this is the absolute key takeaway. It didn't matter one bit whether they even liked Joe. The researchers actually measured that. That feeling of being indebted, of owing him something, it just completely steamrolled their personal feelings. The need to repay the favor was the only thing that mattered.
So what makes this weapon so incredibly powerful? Well, it's because this feeling of debt can be triggered by a favor that you never even wanted in the first place. You might have even seen this in action. The Hare Krishna Society got really famous for this at airports. They'd walk up to you, hand you a gift, like a flower, and just refuse to take it back. And only then would they ask for a donation. You're suddenly trapped by this debt you never asked for, and it becomes almost physically painful to say no. Okay, now let's get a little more sophisticated. There's an even more subtle and, honestly, more brilliant way to use this rule. It doesn't involve giving a physical gift, it involves giving a concession. And that triggers the exact same feeling of debt. Cialdini calls this the Rejection-Then-Retreat Technique. Here's how it works. Someone makes a big request, something you're probably going to say no to. Then they back down and make a much smaller request. Because they retreated, you see it as them making a concession.
and that triggers the rule of reciprocity. You feel this automatic pull to make a concession of your own, which means saying yes to the smaller thing. And this isn't just about buying candy. On a much, much bigger scale, this exact tactic might just be the key to understanding one of the most baffling political blunders in modern history, the Watergate break-in.
See, the plan to bug the DNC wasn't the first idea they came up with, not by a long shot. First, a guy named G. Gordon Liddy proposed this absolutely insane $1 million plan with kidnapping and mugging squads. Of course, they said no. So then he came back with a scaled-down $500,000 plan, rejected again. It was only after those two rejections that he retreated to the final $250,000 plan. And compared to the other two, well, it seemed like a reasonable concession. And it got approved.
So wow, with all these powerful, automatic forces working against us, what are we supposed to do? How can we possibly defend ourselves?
Well, the good news is you don't have to become a total hermit and reject every nice thing someone does for you. The secret is actually pretty simple. You just have to redefine what's happening in your head.
Go ahead and accept the initial favor. But the moment you realize it wasn't a genuine gift, that it was actually a compliance tactic, a sales trick, you just mentally relabel it. That's not a gift, it's a trick. And the rule says you should repay a favor with a favor. It says nothing about repaying a trick with a favor. Suddenly, the weapon is disarmed. You're completely free to say no without feeling any of that psychological weight.
You know, there's a great quote from Leonardo da Vinci. It is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. And that's exactly the point here. Once you understand these tactics, you can spot them coming from a mile away. You can diffuse their power before that click-whirr response ever takes over.
And here's the crazy part. Reciprocity is just the first weapon. Cialdini lays out 5 others: commitment, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. Awareness really is your best shield. So as you go about your day today, I've got a question for you. How many of these little tricks, these weapons of influence, are you going to spot being aimed directly at you? And maybe more importantly, how will you choose to respond?